Hello, gang. Professor McElroy here. We are to Learning Module 2, Week 2 in Digital Illustration class. Good job so far with Learning Module 1. I think everyone in the course submitted their illustrations. Some of you chose to do a vector version of the Matt's Red Hots hot dog mascot. A few of you chose to kind of digitally draw over top a photograph of other characters. And I even got a logo or two of students practicing drawing in a little bit more of a scalable graphic, kind of simplistic modern approach to digital illustration. As we're learning the pen tool, we're learning about fills and strokes, we're learning about the Pathfinder tool, and we're just learning about what makes Adobe Illustrator and the applications for Adobe Illustrator so important in the world of branding, right? Branding is what it's all about. And you can think of it everywhere from, celebrities trying to build personal brands to products and services that are building recognizable visuals, pictographs, typography, symbols, all kinds of things that represent what they're trying to sell or communicate to a consumer, a product or service, and the memorable quality of that graphic. And whether it's applied to a multimedia solution or to a t-shirt or to a packaging or to websites or vehicle graphics or billboards or whatever that branding opportunity is, it's generated in a scalable environment, which is Adobe Illustrator. And that's what we talked about last week. So really good job getting comfortable with kind of the basics of what this program is, getting into the basic drawing tools and learning how to set up an Illustrator file with, in essence, a watermark template that you draw on top of and start creating that vector illustration. With the reinforcer being that you don't have to be an expert illustrator. You don't have to be someone that loves to draw in order to be good at Illustrator. There are so many resources out there. And as we're going to see this week, chapter 3 and 4 in your book, chapter 3 is all about that kind of rawness of the creative process with the doodling of a concept, something in your brain that you want to put on paper and how you transfer that into a digital world. So we'll do a little bit of drawing, reinforcing, pen work, Illustrator work over top of some doodle sketches that I set up in an Illustrator file that we'll download from the announcement section in a minute. And then we'll talk about some kind of shortcuts and best practices and using the join and direct select a tool and that sort of thing, because chapter 4 in your book is kind of about manipulating the line quality of your drawing based on the node selection or direct select tool in Illustrator. So we'll take a look at that. We'll do some more advanced stuff. And I kind of want to push us towards introducing typography into Illustrator, what it means, what it looks like, how to live trace or create outlines for your typography, how to apply effects to them, how to expand appearance, how to do things that take some more enhanced techniques that have been built into Illustrator, but also keep them in a vector environment for scalability, for transferability, and that sort of thing. So those are kind of the skills we're going to cover, chapter 3 and 4 in your book. Just like in week 1, we're going to do an illustration, start an illustration, a couple of doodles in Illustrator to do what we need to learn from an outcome standpoint from chapter 3 and 4 in your book. You may complete the file that we're working on as part of our lecture for chapter 3 and 4 in your book. If you choose to, you can trace or create the Frankenstein image, which is part of your chapter 3 for chapter 3 and 4 in your book, because that takes a little bit of node manipulation and some more drawing practice. So you can either do the Frankenstein project that's in chapter 3 in your book as chapter 3 and 4, complete the entire illustration, or you can finish what our lecture is tonight and and submit that as an Illustrator file for chapter 3 and 4 submission. And we'll talk about the out of book project after our lecture, because you won't be able to submit the lecture for your out of book for learning module 2. I want you to do something original, something that inspires you, and something that's unique for our out of book project, but we're going to do the skills in our lecture required to create the out of book project. So thank you for logging on time. It looks like there's a handful of you logged on time tonight for the 6:30 lecture. Remember, TEC is live, it's recorded, it's synchronous, it's asynchronous, it's all of these different modalities all in one. So it's okay to be live online watching the lecture. It's okay to be watching it recorded. You know, it's okay interacting in the lab. All of those things are perfect and great. That's what's beautiful about TEC. It gives you a little bit of life flexibility. So let's kind of dive in to Learning Module 2, Lesson 2 for Week 2. And the first thing we have to do is we have to go into our announcement section, and we've got to download the Illustrator file that I set up. And I pre-set up an Illustrator file with some sketch doodles for some illustration concepts. Very much your chapter 3 in your book is about the different stages of kind of the creative process, the rough doodling, the little more detailed sketch, and then the importing into Illustrator and vectorizing, creating a scalable graphic from your concept. And just to kind of step that back for a brief second, I mean, going back to my early days of commercial art, being a commercial artist, I would look through magazines. I would tear out images. I would take those pages to a light board. I would put a piece of tissue paper over the pages I tore out of magazines or the pictures I printed off the internet. And if I needed a guy playing a guitar, I might go to a music magazine, find an image, and then either holding up the tracing paper to a window so that I got the right amount of light to trace or doodle the outline of it. So I made sure I got the scale and proportion correct. Or maybe I had access to a light table and I would take that printout or that advertisement or that photo that I tore out of a magazine or I pulled out of a magazine and lay it on the light table and trace it. I wouldn't do the detail line work, but I would do the outline. I would do the basic line work that I needed to in order to get the gist of the object I was creating, a person, an animal, a product, maybe it was a tennis shoe or whatever it might be that I was using as the foundation for my vector drawing. And I would, in essence, trace that thing from a photograph. And then once I had it on tissue paper, I would scan it in. Nowadays, students can doodle and they can photograph it with their phone and email it to themselves. The idea is that we're taking kind of, this is what I was thinking, a little piece of a picture I traced, combine it with a piece of a picture I traced of something else and morph that into kind of this concept I have. So maybe I start with like a specific person. Maybe I need a girl with long hair, and then I have to take a picture of glasses, and I want to stick those glasses on the initial doodle sketch I did in order to give the model glasses. And maybe from there I go to a necklace or something. So kind of piecing it together as an image collage in essence without using Photoshop, and then photographing it or tracing it, and then and emailing it to myself. And so the kind of the technology of the sketch or the thumbnail has evolved over time, but the actual application of it, why you're doing it, the process of doing it is still really real today. So even if I go in and take multiple photos and collage them together, cut objects out, paste them into another photograph to create kind of my own surreal image of something. From that, I still need to sketch over the top, doodle it, bring it in like we did last week into Illustrator, make it a watermark image, kind of pen tool and pencil and trace over the top of it. Those are all different ways to get to a digitized point where we can add fills and strokes to our concept to make it a scalable vector graphic. So we're going to do part of that process from a rudimentary standpoint tonight, so we can start to continue to connect the dots of what is raster-based, photo-based, and what is vector-based or scalable graphic based, which is what Illustrator is. And there's a couple of different ways over the course of the last 20, 25 years that artists, visual communicators, designers, graphics people have kind of evolved the process to digitize or vectorize a concept into something that could be applied across any media outlets. And so that's the true concept. So in essence, that's chapter 3 in your book. So let's go ahead and download that file. I'm going to open it up in Illustrator just to kind of get us started here. And you're going to notice it's a couple of doodle sketches. You could Google any concept. So let's say you were looking for a surfer. You could do a Google search and do surfer sketch or surfer illustration, and you'll get all kinds of doodle sketches like these are, of pencil drawings or like early concepts of a vector, the stages of a vector illustration. So depending on what your concept is, kind of what you're looking for. I was a doodler growing up, so I have, gosh, probably 100 sketchbooks that I've collected over the years, from when I, was a child, elementary school, middle school, all the way up to a professional, where even on lunch breaks I would doodle, and I kept all those sketchbooks. Now I doodle on my iPad with my Apple Pencil. So if a client is asking for a logo design, or they want a spot illustration, or they want a graphic for their truck, for their business, and they need me to sketch something out, digitize something, I still will start with my iPad and pencil. The only difference is now if I doodle it in Adobe Illustrator for the iPad, which used to be Adobe Draw, I can immediately save it to the cloud and open it up in Illustrator on my iMac and continue the drawing. So my doodle no longer is an extra step in digitizing. I'm actually doodling in a digitized world, which is really cool. If you like that, you enjoy it, it's something that you're interested in. If not, you can absolutely stencil draw, kind of pencil draw, digital draw over the top of a watermarked photograph. You need an eagle, get a picture of a bald eagle, file, place the JPEG or PNG into Illustrator, make it a layer with a 30% opacity, and use the pencil and the pen tool and draw right over top of it like we did last week. And that's original art, right? You're taking a photograph and you're doing a digital illustration over the top of it, but you're drawing it in your style. You're creating it with your curves and your straight lines and your effects and your fills and your strokes, right? You're using the proportions of the photograph to make sure that the eagle is the correct proportion, the correct motion, but it's no different than having a model sitting in front of you and you're doodling the model, or you're taking a picture. I take a lot of my own pictures, so I might be out there taking photographs of something and then use it as a watermark image to draw a flower or a building or a car or a person or any number of things. But Michaels has wooden models there that you can kind of use for proportion and bend and manipulate. And Disney animators create little 3D models of the characters they've created, and they can bend them and reposition them and put them into the position they need to draw. So they just use 3D models. So they model out their illustration as a 3D form, and then they bend the arms, the legs, the head, the torso in the way that they need in order to sketch it for their animation. So same concept, million different ways to do it. Just know that we're trying to create something proportionate, something that has the right scale, the right perspective, and transferring that into a digital world. Okay, so you see these 3 little sketches, 3 little illustrations that I Googled just to find different things for you to kind of see the process, reinforce the process of drawing and what we're doing here. And we're going to draw this pencil, and then we're going to doodle a little bit. I'm going to show you how to create half of this crown and then replicate the other half and join it so that it becomes one singular shape that we can use to start this little process. This guy's actually perfectly split down the middle, proportionate, like your Frankenstein image in your book. So we could draw half of this image and then make a copy and flip it and merge it, and we can make this guy out of 1/2 of himself into a full version of himself. So we'll do a little bit of that. And I also want to introduce typography tonight and talk a little bit about type in Illustrator. And that will cover our chapters 3 and 4 tonight. It'll go till about, I don't know, it should go till about 8, 8:15, hour and 45 minutes typically is about the length of my lecture. It's a good compact recording length for those that are doing it asynchronously and watching it later. So that's good. But it also gives us time at the end. So you can doodle around a little bit, practice a little bit, work on the project if you want to, take a little exhale, step away from the computer, whatever you got to do. Okay, so we're going to start with this little pencil, and we're going to just talk about some of the skills from like last week for drawing this thing. So we're going to draw this pencil. We're going to talk about the pen tool again. So I'm going to zoom in, Command plus, just to get in close. I'm going to hold the space bar down to pan it a little bit. So I need to go about 200%. That gives me about the right shape for this pencil. And you're going to notice each one of the kind of the grooves to the cap of the pencil are all the same line. This is its own shape, and then the bottom pencil is its own shape. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. You'll notice that the file place that I did for the JPEGs, I placed them, but I made sure they were embedded. So when you do file place, you want to make sure that that link button or box isn't checked when you do file place, so the image is embedded, right? So I made my own first layer as my sketch layer, just like last week, try to reinforce the skills over and over again. And then I added a new layer with the plus symbol, and we're going to call this our drawing layer, right? So this is really, in essence, our sketch image IMG layer. Oh. And this is our drawing, or you can also call it your vector layer, whatever you want to call it. And that's the layer we're going to be creating on. So I'm going to start, I guess I'm going to start with maybe this eraser top here, and we'll create that first with the pen tool. So let's just do some of the things we did last week. I have the pen tool selected. I'm going to make sure my fill down here in the lower left-hand corner, right? The fill is none and the stroke is black. I'm going to click my pencil to start my node. I'm actually going to hold down Shift to draw a straight line. So I'm going to click that once, and let's zoom in now because I'm working on that. Hold down the space bar, and you're going to notice that curve, right? So we're going to curve the top of this pencil. So I'm going to go about to the middle point of the pencil now that I have the straight line drawn. I'm going to click and drag, right? Click and drag. If you hold down Shift, it'll click as kind of a straight 90-degree curve. So I'm going to let that go. And you'll notice that I have the first kind of beginning of this eraser drawn. So I'm going to go ahead and click the selection tool and deselect for a minute. So you can see that this eraser actually is perfectly symmetrical. So I'm going to use my pen tool, and I'm going to go back down, and I'm going to draw the bottom half. So I just clicked my mouse once to reconnect that line. I'm going to move my mouse over so that it's aligned perfectly with my smart guide. See how it follows it? And I'm going to click and drag out, holding down Shift to make sure it's a perfect curve, right? So here it is. I've drawn half of my eraser. So now, if I do edit copy and edit paste, I can actually create a copy of this thing. So you see that? And I'm going to go in and I'm going to do transform, and I'm going to do reflect. And you're going to notice if I vertically reflect this thing, I now have the other end of my eraser. So I can actually match that thing up now. So I only had to draw half of it in order to create the beginning of this eraser. But you may not know this, but this is not a completed shape, even though it looks like a completed shape. You see how that part's there and that part's there? It's because I have to connect this dot to that dot, right? They're two empty shapes right now. And so I could take my mouse and click here and go down to the bottom, right? And get my close shape. So you see that close shape where it has the little empty circle, and it would let me close my shape. And I could do this as one shape, and then this is one shape, and use my Pathfinder tool and in essence unite those two shapes. But I can also do this. So if I take my direct select and I just draw a selection box over the spot where these two things overlap. So you see I'm just clicking and dragging and connecting where these two things overlap. So you see that? And I'm going to go to Object, Path, and I'm going to do what's called average. And average just means it's going to find the vertical and horizontal placement of these two dots and connect them. And you see the axis or horizontal and vertical, And so now, in essence, these two things are connected. And I'm going to go down and use my direct select, and I'm going to do object path average, and I'm going to connect those two things. So now, if I zoom out a little bit, I have this thing connected as one shape. So when I click on it, I have it as a completed shape. So now I'm going to kind of, let's see here while we're doing it. So remember, as you draw, things connect on top of each other. They kind of connect on top of each other or stacked on top of each other. I might as well go in and do the line work to finish these caps and the little lines I have going on in here. So I guess the first one I'll do is I'll do the first of these cap lines. So I'm just going to click and drag my mouse, right? So there it is. And you'll notice that the thickness of this line is a little bit thicker. So let's go in and update our thickness, right? And remember from last week, we can round the corners. So you see me selecting that, lets it round the corners. And I'm going to show you a little trick. You can do Shift Option and drag copies of this line right off of itself. So I'm just going to do Shift Option and drag the mouse down, and it'll allow me to create duplicates of this line. I'm actually going to drop another one right on top, and you're going to notice that now I have the exact same line drawn and duplicated. I could have done edit, copy, edit, paste, and move each one down into its position. But if you hold Shift and Option down after you click on the line, so you click and hold your mouse down and do Shift and Option, and you drag, drag, drag down and let go of the mouse before Shift and Option, it makes a duplicate copy. And so now I got to zoom in and let's see what the line thickness was of this one is 2 point. So I need to make sure that this thing is 2 point. And so now I can go in and I'm going to go in and create my little trick lines I have going on here. So I need to click here and drag down and make that line and round it, right? So deselect and round it, then click on this one. And I'm just following the template that I drew, my doodle sketch. And so there's the next one. And then this technically is a little short line. So let's do that and deselect it. So now you can just kind of see what I have going on. If I hide that, you'll notice that I have the beginning of my little sketch that I made traced out. So I have it locked. So I only mess around with what I have. And now also kind of a thing to know is Smart Guide. So I don't necessarily have to draw half the pencil in order to make sure my lines are exactly the same. I can actually go to the pencil. So I'm going to go right to here. I'm going to hold down Shift to draw a straight line. So watch, I'm going to draw a straight line and click the mouse and let go. And then I'm going to go on an angle because the pencil's an angle. And I'm going to go down to the center. See how it's Smart Guide is kind of finding the center of the pencil. So I'm going to click right there one time. Now watch when I move my mouse up. I can actually move my mouse up here and kind of find my center spot. So I'm just going to kind of move it. You see how you kind of can Smart Guide, Smart Guide, Smart Guide. It snaps to right there. So I know that it's perfect. See how I move it up and it lines up to the original dot. I'm going to click my mouse because it's perfect. And then watch this. I'm going to go over here and click and pull, and I can pull my line to curve, and I have a finished pencil. And let's just make sure that my properties are saying 2 point, right? So now you'll notice when I hide my sketch, look at my pencil. It's pretty good, but I'm going to zoom in because you're going to notice that my curve, see my dots? So let me just see something here. I'm going to do that, and I'm going to hold down Shift with my direct select. So I have those 2 points selected. And then I'm going to go to my alignment and make sure they're aligned vertically. So I'm going to click on that, and they are aligned vertically. So that means that these 2 points aren't perfectly centered. So I'm just going to move it up a little bit. And there we go. And so now I kind of have my pencil going on here. So I got to turn my layers back on. So you're noticing the process. Now, when we get to the parts of the interior of the illustration where we want the shapes to be filled, you know, this part of the pencil would be a different color. It's kind of the shaved part, like where it's kind of a really light yellow or a light wood color, and then this part is yellow. I need this shape, all these curved lines here, to be filled in. So I got to go with my pencil now, and I'm going to do my curve. And remember, I'm going back to the center point for you guys, just to show you. So I gotta go over here. I'm gonna click right about there. And you're gonna notice my line. See how that point doesn't come up to that point? So, but I have my smart guides on. So my smart guides will let me create this shape as a full shape, just like that. But this line's actually lower. That point's lower than that point, which is okay because a doodle sketch isn't perfect. It doesn't have to be perfect. See, it's part of my sketch. My sketch is just a template. So now I need to make sure that this, and you also notice all of these shapes I'm creating, I am not filling them in. I'm just doing the line work right now to get my pencil created, right? Because if I selected this, I can make it white or whatever color I want that thing to be, black, right? But I'm not there yet. I want everything to be no fill, only a stroke, so I can kind of replicate what I have going on here over top of my drawing. So let's zoom in a little bit. Now you're going to notice these are all just little lines. So I think instead of my pen tool, I'm going to use my line segment tool. So I'm going to drag lines. So you got to kind of know what will work best, whether it's the pen tool, a rectangle, or an oval tool, or maybe line segment to draw kind of straight lines. It's all stylistic. Everyone started to create their own little style with their out of book project from week 1. I'm just kind of showing you different ways, different thought processes for how things can be created over a sketch or a photograph or whatever that thing might be. And so let's see here, I'll zoom out a little bit, but you'll notice I'm trying to keep everything to point, keeping it to point so that I have a consistency of what I'm doing. I think I'm going to use the line segment tool for this one. But now that I've drawn that line, I'm going to click on it, hold my mouse down, do Shift Option, and drag a copy of it over. And now I have that line created. But now I think line segment is better for these. So I'm just going to click and drag. And it doesn't have to be perfect, right? That's part of creating your own style. Like when I'm doing an illustration, it depends on the client what kind of style I'm going to use, whether it's going to be more expressive, maybe more minimalistic. A lot of it just depends on what the client need is, like what their style is, because every client's a little bit different. So sometimes I can do more of a doodle style. Sometimes I can do more realistic, like really create a pencil with gradients and all kinds of different fill colors and really get detailed. And other times it'll be a simple black and white drawing, which this could be when I was done if I needed it to be. And so let's get into the layers. Let's hide the stencil for a minute, just so you can see how my pencil's coming along. And no, this is all 2-point thickness. It's all black right now. And I'm just creating my illustration. Now you'll see this. I got to do the wings. The beauty about the wings is once I draw this side, and notice it's an open shape, it's not connected. See how this isn't connected? So there isn't a fill for this. It's a line drawing. If I wanted it to be a fill, I would have to take this wing and connect it at the end of it in order for it. So it's just a black and white. So it's just going to be like a pencil drawing. I'm actually using my arrow keys to nudge that line a little bit. And I'm going to bend this line. And so curve it out. And then I'm going to go back to my center dot and click on that. I'm going to bend this. All right, I'm going to go back to my center dot. And I'm going to go back to here. And this line has to overlap. So I'm going to bend that. And then I'm going to remove it. And you're going to notice I'm not being absolutely 100% centered on every part of my wing, right? I'm not being perfectly centered. Could I go back diagonally and just click my mouse once like that? Yeah, but you see how it overlaps that fill? This thing actually curves a little bit so that it's a little less chunky of an overlap line. So I'm just following my drawing, but remember, it's my preference, right? I can kind of make the personality of this pencil drawing any way that I want to. But I know I want to replicate this so that it's the same wing on the other side of the pencil. And so some of these skills we did last week that we're just doing as a reinforcer, and other ones we're introducing some new thought processes behind why we're doing what we're doing. And so you're kind of seeing my thought process as I'm creating this wing, right? And so now when I got to the end, if I connected this and took it to there, it would mean that this is a completed shape, which means if I could fill it with color, right? There's no void in the wing. The problem is it would also make me have my stroke line right here, which I don't want to do because my concept was it was open. It was just a sketch of the wing. So I'm not going to close that shape. Unlike my pencil, where I close the shape for fill colors, this one I'm not going to. And you'll notice, and I'm going to use the line segment instead of the pen tool. And so you'll actually notice that this is slightly different than my doodle, just to make it different. Like the doodle was only the beginning of my concept here. So I'm going to finish this doodle, do the patterns on the wings, the line work. And the personality of it is it's that every line segment isn't exactly the same. I mean, if you're very modern, very type A personality, and maybe you want this symmetry to be exactly the same on every line and every curve, then you might want to use your pen tool to create the strokes. But I'm just kind of free forming it a little bit as I go, because I want it to have personality. All right, so let's zoom out a little bit. And you'll notice that these two wings are exactly the same. So if these things are exactly the same and there's no fill to them, I actually am going to use my arrow keys and move that off a little bit. So it's a little bit jaggy. I could rotate it. I think maybe I need to rotate it a little bit. Remember, this is all with the selection arrow. What if I use my node to direct select just this point to move it a little bit? That's better. All right, so I have that. And now if there's no fill in here and the stroke's going to be black and this is exactly the way I want it, I'll actually draw a selection box over just the wing and do Object Group or Command G. And see how this thing is all grouped now? So now I can either do Edit, Copy, Edit, Paste, or Command C and Command V, or I can click on it and hold Shift and Option down and drag a perfect copy of it. And I'm going to do that because I want to stay on the same horizontal line. And then I can do Object, Transform, Reflect, and it will bounce it over to the other side. Now I'm just going to use my arrow keys and move it. And you'll notice now that my wings are in the exact same place and they reflect each other, even though technically this pencil doesn't because I drew some pieces of it separately. You're getting the idea. So now let's go ahead and fill the pencil in just so that you can kind of see what we were working towards. So I'm going to take this. Now, this brings us over to our colors, right? Our colors. We could just randomly pick colors in this spectrum, right? And we know a pencil is kind of the reddish color. So we could go over here and pick some version of a reddish color like that. And that's got a CMYK color mixture of 12%, roughly 100%, 100%, and about 3%. And that's what makes up this color. But this is just called what is called a mixed color, a CMYK, just general mixed color. But really, when drawing in vector world, best practice is to use what are called Pantone colors. And think of that as like going to Lowe's and going into the swatches section of the paint and picking a particular swatch color. Maybe it's Valspar, or maybe it's HGTV home color palette, whatever it is, and you pick a swatch out of there. That swatch out of there is in essence like a pre-mixed color that's the same every Lowe's you go to. And honestly, it has a CMYK color mixture. And if you took that swatch to Home Depot, even though they don't sell Valspar, they could mix the exact same color. So it's exactly the same everywhere. Why is that important? Well, it's important because if this pencil ended up being a cookie jar, they could match the color glaze of the cookie jar with the exact same color that you picked in your Illustrator file for your logo drawing. Those colors can be printed on a vehicle wrap at a place in Texas. You can print t-shirts overseas. Let's say they were printed in Germany. They can use the exact same colors if you use Pantone colors. So it's really important in digital illustration world that you use some version of a pre-mixed color from a color book. And Pantone is just really the global choice for pre-mixed colors. And you can actually click on your swatches and go over to your little triple lines here and click on it. And you're going to notice swatch library. Now, swatch libraries have all kinds of pre-mixed theme swatch colors that Illustrator has built over the years, depending on what designers use, kind of generally food and earth tone colors and skin tones and gradient premixes and metal and nature and neutral. But right up here is color books. And you're going to notice right here are all of the different Pantone color books. And coded means that the color is mixed for a medium piece of paper that has a coating on it, a sticker, a vinyl graphic, something that has a clear coating on it. The colors are ever so slightly saturated different based on whether it has a shine or shimmer to the final application. And uncoated is exactly what it sounds like. The application is for a matte or an absorbed medium where the ink is being absorbed into a natural environment. No shine, no shimmer. And they are slightly different, coated versus uncoated. You'll notice this is a cyan, magenta, yellow, and black color mixture. You'll notice a metallic color mixture, specifically to fake metal embossing. You'll see Pantones and neons. You'll see enhanced or premium metallics, which means coated metallics. You'll notice just standard old solid colors, direct solid swatch colors, and a color bridge, a bridge color, where they're bridging the range of colors into a mixture. Where I play most, I am in a cyan, magenta, yellow, and black uncoated. A lot of what I do is matte finish or organic in nature. I also am in the solid, more traditional mixture booklet of solid uncoated. And occasionally I will be in the metallic environment because I have a client that wants me to make something look like gold foil or silver leafed, and they don't want to pay for gold foil or silver leaf, but they want to get the shimmer and shine of it. So I'll be in a metallic coated or a metallic premium coated environment. I very rarely, next to never, use color bridge or pastel. Even if I'm doing a pastel environment, I pick from a cyan, magenta, yellow, and black CMYK uncoated environment. Neons you can't really replicate. You need to be in that Pantone book, but I've got to be honest, I've printed on neon materials in my 25 years of designing. A neon shirt with a print on it, but I haven't printed neon before. But if you want that look, then you need to be in the pastels and neon. So let's go to the CMYK uncoated. And so here you go. So now you're going to notice all of these colors. And as I mouse over them, you're going to notice Pantone 12-U 11U or uncoded. So it's telling the printer, the producer, the person creating with this color exactly what the premium mixture is. So let's just scroll down a little bit. I'm going to go into the red range. I'm going to click on my thing here. I'm going to go into my red range because I think my eraser is going to be some version of this. In this case, it is 46-8U. Now, you'll notice that it adds it to the swatch library. Very good. So you can use it over and over again. But you can double click on it and it does have a cyan, magenta, yellow, and black equivalent 0, 91, 92, 22. But you'll also notice there isn't a point whatever percentage. These are pure Pantone color mixtures. So I want to stick with that one. And then I need something for my pencil. So I got to go up here in my yellow range, but the yellow pencil is something like that, I think. And so I'm going to pick that. And so 10-8U. And then I need this because this is some version of the light color. Now you'll notice I like to stay in the vertical row or the tint range of this particular color mixture. So I'm going to go down a little bit because I think my pencil needs to be some version of right around here. So I'm going to go down to my tint version and go one shade lighter, and I'm going to click on that. And then I'm trying to remember, but I think the pencil tip is traditionally black. And so now you'll notice these are all Pantone colors that I've selected. These 3 Pantone colors, and black is just straight 100% black mixture. And so now if I wanted to, using this as a 3-color mixture, I'm going to go in and maybe I'll make my wings the red color. And I still have the option to do some black lines. So I think I'll do something with the crown when I get up here. So I don't want to use it. We can do 4-color process. So maybe I'll keep this out for a minute because maybe I'll make the crown some version of silver. So let's zoom in. And I'm going to use my pen tool. I got to draw the outside of the crown first, and I got to draw the oval in here. But you'll notice, I don't know if I want that to be a shape or not. I'll figure it out when I'm drawing. So let's start here. I'm going to create a curved line. I'm going to go here. You'll notice it picked up the red color. I'm going to curve that. I go down to here. Curve that. And I'm just drawing this free form personality. And you'll notice I find the spot where it's the same. And I'll curve it across. And then just sake of the shortening of the process, I'm going to curve this as one line. I could go and put a dot in the middle of there. All right, so that's the beginning of my crown. And then I need this oval shape, but you know what? I think maybe an ellipse might be the best for this. I'm going to draw the circle, and then I'm going to use my bounding box and stretch it up. And so now I created that part with my circle. So you'll see that's that, and that's that. All right, now I have this little tip of my crown here. I think I will make it a shape just in case I want to fill it in later. So let's do this. I'm going to curve it, go back to my middle dot, go to here, curve it, go back to my middle dot. There's that. And then remember, go back and select it. I'm going to do Shift Option and drag a copy and do Object, Transform, Reflect. So you're noticing that I'm using things I've already done. So now I have both those pieces. We have some things we have to do now. You'll notice the center is like a circle with 2 circles cut out of it. Well, we know from last week that we can do that with the circle tool. So let's zoom in a little bit. And I'm going to hold down Shift and draw a perfect circle. So there it is. And I'm going to take my circle tool and I'm going to create a circle to cut off of here. And I'm going to create a circle to cut off of here. And so now we know that I can take this and hold down Shift and select this one. There it is. Let's go back to our Pathfinder tool. It doesn't look like I have it opened yet. So let's go to Window, Pathfinder, and let's cut that hole out. So I need to select this one, hold down Shift, cut that hole out. So now you'll notice that that is in essence that little crescent shape that we created in our sketch. So it's a circle with two circles divided or minused out of that circle to create our shape. That was our Pathfinder tool last week. So that's just another version of it. So now I'm going to draw the circle. I'm going to switch it back to stroke and watch what I'm going to do here. I'm going to go in and I'm going to add some points. The reason I'm going to add points is because if I zoom in, so watch what happens if I click here after I added 2 points and hit delete. I've created, in essence, a punch hole in my circle. So you see that? So now watch if I go in here. See how many points I can add. Let's pick that. And so you'll notice, see this there? I need to make this a little straightaway. And so I need another one there. And so now if I direct select the middle point, or actually I need to select this one, hit delete, and then pick maybe this one. Ugh, I didn't make enough points. I need to add, it looks like maybe another one. Let's see how many points we have here. You see this? So let's just see if I pick just this one. And then let's add another point here. Got another point here. Let's see what we have. Another point here. Select this one, get rid of it. That gives us a piece. And I need another piece in there. And so now it looks like I need one here, and one in the middle. And so now, and I'm just hitting delete. So now I'm using my direct select tool to add points and then select the points I want deleted. And so see, if I hide the layers now, I get the essence of what I doodled by using different tools. Sometimes the line segment, sometimes the pen, sometimes the shape tool, and sometimes just adding points to the shape. And so now I got to go back to, I drew straight lines on the pencil, so I'm not going to curve these either because I didn't curve them. With the pencil. But you'll notice in my doodle, I actually curved them. And so I probably, and you're going to notice I'm drawing the shapes before, after I draw, I'm drawing the lines after I draw the overall shapes. The reason I'm doing that is, remember, they're created on top of each other. So if I draw the shapes first and then just the lines, when I fill the shapes in, the lines will be on top of the shapes. So there's rhyme or reason to that. I'm trying to, these really should be curved, but for the sake of the process, because I didn't curve the other ones, I'm just going to draw straight lines. Let me move that out of the way for a minute. And I'm picking and choosing between the shape tool, the line segment tool, the pen tool, like what's going to work best for recreating my drawing. All right, now you're going to notice that this particular part of my thing is a curved shape. So let me finish the lines that aren't curved, and then we'll go back to our pen tool and do what needs to be an actual shape. So there's that. Go back to selection arrow and deselect. create this one, curve that a little bit, go back to my selection arrow and deselect, go back to my pen tool, go back and curve it, go back to my selection arrow and deselect. So now all I have left is underneath, the underneath part of my crown. Oh, I do have that jaggy line right there. So now, before I go any further, I'm going to draw a big selection box over the top of this entire thing. And I'm going to make it black stroke. And I'm going to make it a stroke weight of 2 for the entire thing, just to make sure it's consistent. Now, let's make sure that it's rounded on the end, right? Because the other one was rounded. And then we have to go in here and flip this because that's a fill and not a, it's a stroke, not a fill, or fill, not a stroke. All right, so the last thing I got to do is I got to go in here and take care of these lines. Yes, they should be curved, but for the sake of what I did with the pencil, all right, I got to go back and reset this. 1, 2. Rounded, and let's make it black. That way, every line I draw is exactly the same inside this crown. Yes, these should be curved. My doodle is that they're curved. But because I didn't curve the lines on the pencil for style purposes, I want to be consistent with the style. So I'm just drawing the lines. And you can Google any pencil drawing, any sketch for practicing what we're doing here. You can use the ones in this file if you want to. Now, before I go back and fill in the crown, while I have my property set on this, I'm just going to drag my lines to finish my sketch concept. And so now hold down the space bar, drag. I'm going to zoom out a little bit so you can just see how it is so far. I'm going to use my layers and hide. So now you can see how I now have a digital version of my sketch. I'm going to keep that turned on for a minute because we got to go in here for the crown. I'm guessing the crown, should it be some of the yellow from what I had done? Oh, not the stroke. I want the fill now. Let's go into swatches. I could make it the same color as the pencil, which is kind of cool. I could make this, actually, this would be the darker color, and this would be the lighter color if we were actually doing the appropriate shadowing, which is cool because it inverts the shavings of the pencil and the pencil color and the pencil color and the shavings of the pencil. So it makes it kind of cool, actually. So let's zoom in. And I think I need these because they're behind the other part of the crown. They should be dark. And you know, now that I'm looking at this, these lines ideally should be 1 point instead of 2 point because they're starting to bundle together. But none of the other lines are 1 point. So for consistency purposes, I'm going to keep this exactly the way it is. So that's that, that's that. Now, I'm going to go in now and I'm going to turn off the stencil, the sketch, just so you can see what I created. So here it is as a digitized version of my drawing. We used the pen tool, we used the shape tool, we used the line segment tool. We learned about Pantone colors to use the correct color application for filling in our illustration. So now I have my Pantone colors that I can use over and over again, no matter what the application. If I'm doing a website, I can use the CMYK color or the hex number equivalent of this yellow color, which I'll show you. Is right here. So this little code of FEBE10 is called a hexadecimal number or hex number. The first 3 letters are R, the red color code. The second ones are the green color code. And the last 2 numbers are the RGB or blue color code mixture. which equates to 254, 190, and 16 in hexadecimal code. So that means if we created a website and we wanted that particular yellow to be somewhere on the website, we can set the hexadecimal number to be the exact Pantone color of the color from the logo. So that's really important. The reason you pick pre-mixed colors from a color book is so that you can use the exact same color across all media solutions. Will the monitor shift the color a little bit based on how well the monitor is calibrated for the website? Yeah, your phone might look slightly different if it's in dark mode than your tablet, if that's in the lighter color setting on your screen, right? There's some color shift that happens based on the calibration of color on your screen, but you'll know that that's the exact same color that was used in print on the vehicle graphic or on the t-shirt or on the business card or on the advertisement or the billboard, whatever it is, you're using the exact same colors. So Pantone colors are really important in digital illustration. Now, the red wings, I like them. The lines, cool. I don't think I would change that from black. I think I have what I want as far as that goes. So once I have it, I would draw a big box around it and I would do Object Group or Command G. So now this thing moves as one piece. I don't have to worry about by mistake moving any one small piece of it. And so here it is. I'm actually going to show you now one thing that you need to be really aware of when you draw something in Illustrator. So I'm going to do copy and paste, edit, copy, edit, paste. And so here's my little replica of my thing. I'm going to go into Window and open up the Transform window, because you're going to notice under Transform, you see how this says Scale, Strokes, and Effects? That box is really important to be checked, because watch what happens if I uncheck it and I scale this down. See how the line stays 2 point even as it gets smaller? Well, that's no bueno. That's not good. We need it to scale based on the scale size of the image. So if I turn that on now and I hold down Shift, see how the crown scales down the thickness or the stroke weight of the line based on how small it is. So look how beautiful it looks when you zoom in. This thing is really small. So I'm going to hold down Shift and make it even smaller. And watch me zoom in. It's still perfect. Look at this thing. It's still perfect. So if I zoom out now, it looks just like this in mini me size, this size. So that's really important that Scale, Stroke, and Effects is turned on in your Transform palette when you draw something in Illustrator and you have the line weight and then the strokes and everything exactly the way you want it, but you need to make it really small. Look how small it is. And it's still perfect in proportion to the version you drew really large. So Scale, Stroke, and Effects is really important. When we get into later on in class and we start adding effects to our drawings, right? Maybe we add a drop shadow or an outer glow, or we warp it in some way, shape, or form, or we have any number of preset scalable vector graphic filters or artistic filters or rendering styles or anything under this a window. We need to make sure we have that Scale, Stroke, and Effects checked. So if we put a drop shadow and we scale it down, the proportion of the drop shadow on the object we drew stays the same when it's the size of a stamp or as big as a building wrap that's 80 feet by 80 feet. You want to make sure that the proportion of the strokes and the effects stays exactly the same. That's really important because if you draw a vector graphic and it ends up being a logo, and that logo needs to be branded on this or screen printed on the side of a shoe, but you also need to make it for a billboard, you want to make that the same outer glow, the same drop shadow, the same texturized effect that you applied to that vector drawing looks exactly the same on the shoebox package as the billboard. You don't want those effects or their stroke weights to vary or change based on the scale of the application. So it may look kind of weird this small, but when you zoom in, it's not weird at all. It's perfect. So this is perfect as a stamp, and it's perfect to put on the side of a vehicle graphic. So there is doodle sketch number one, just kind of going through the process of using the different drawing tools to draw on top of a sketch in order to create a finished vector graphic. Now, once I have that, I don't need the sketch anymore, right? Once I've done that, I don't need the sketch anymore. I could technically, and I would probably, trash that layer so that it isn't there in my digitized form. And I would rename this file as a pencil logo final instead of sketch file. But with the sketch file, I'll leave it there because the sketch file includes the hidden layer of my sketch. So let's just do that one more time just to kind of tie what we were doing from a drawing standpoint together. Now you're going to notice this thing is a much more complex line work. But you're going to notice the crown is the same. So let's go in now and we're going to redo what we did for a process, but I'm going to do it a little bit quicker now because you've seen the process. I'm going to bend that. Remember, I'm going to turn off my fill because let me do that. I'm going to do that. I'm going to do that. And I'm going to deselect it for a minute because I want to continue the end of this thing. So there it is. I'm going to click on this, copy and paste, object, transform, reflect. I'm going to bring this, I'm going to bring it up. I'm going to snap it to my drawing, right? So let's make sure that this thing, so let's take this thing. Now you're going to notice the sketch actually, if I zoom out just a skosh, it's not exactly the same. So you see that? That one's pretty close, but this one isn't. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my direct select, pick this point, and just snap it to that point. I'm going to draw a big selection box over it. I'm going to do object path join. I'm going to take this one, object path join. And so now I have this thing as one shape. Now I need to go in and create the next piece. And I'm going to do this quicker because you saw me do it the first time. There it is. Shift option, drag a copy of it, object transform, reflect. There it is. I'm going to drag it over and you'll notice this one is better. It's not perfect. And so let's zoom in. And I'm going to go into my thing here because I need to lock that so I don't select the points. Object, path, join. And I'm going to snap that to there with direct select and then object, path, join. And I got to make sure that this thing goes like that. So zoom out, zoom out, zoom out. Now, zoom in a little bit. And you see this thing? I'm going to hold down shift and select those 2 points. And I'm going to move the angle of this so it sticks off the crown a little bit. So I can direct select and manipulate just the individual pieces. And so now my pen tool, I'm going to go here to there. And this one's pretty self-explanatory, so I don't have to draw half and unify it. There it is. And now let's do the lightning bolt real quick. Let's zoom in a little bit. This is pretty self-explanatory because it's a straight line. But I do want to, I don't like, you see how that's sticking way jagged out. So remember, we can pick the different corner radiuses, right? So that's the big miter joint. This is the round joint. This is the angled joint. I think angled actually is the better version, what they call beveled version of that tip for that. And so zoom out. So I have the beginning of this. Now, just for the sake of the process, let's get in and unlock that for a minute. I'm just going to fill this dude in. And so I'm going to go a different route this time because this is like a medieval dude. So I like blues and kind of steely grays and stuff when we're dealing in this environment. So I think I'm going to go, let's go, the crown, I'm going to go like this light shade. I'm going to select this and make it this dark shade. I'm going to select this. And I'm going to do kind of a really light shade. And then this, I'm going to flip it over. Just so I have the basics going here. All right, zoom in. And yes, I know that there is line work in here that I want to go in and trace like I did before, but I went in to fill that in just so that I could see kind of what it looks like and kind of pick the colors that I need. So just for the sake of this process, I'm going to keep drawing. This guy's going to be like steely blue in nature. So let's get in here and I'm going to draw the silhouette of this guy's face. I'm going to get in here. I'm going to curve that. I'm going to turn off the fill, right? Turn off the fill so I can draw this thing. But I actually want to, I'm just doing edit undo. I want to draw to the outside of this shape just so that you can see what I'm replicating. So I'm actually going to trace the outside of this shape just so that you can see the thickness of the illustration. And I only have to draw half because I'm going to reflect this shape to create the whole. So there's there. And your book actually does the Frankenstein thing where the guy is perfectly drawn in silhouette. But honestly, if you took a photograph of, let's say, a tiger's face and you trace the outer half and the mane and everything, you could then just flip it and make it symmetrical, like a tattoo. And so there's that. And the reason why I did that, and it doesn't matter, is because the face is going behind the crown. So Shift Option, Object, Transform, Reflect. Notice you can also right click on that line and it gives you these same properties. So I could right click it and not go to the drop down menu if I wanted to. I was just doing that to show you the long way of this. Now you'll notice, look how this lines up. That lines up pretty good, but this one doesn't at all. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to lock my other shapes that I've drawn here, just so that I only have access to these 2 points I've created. So I'm going to use direct select. And I'm going to join those 2 dots. But I'm going to use direct select and I'm going to manipulate these because they don't match up. I'm going to slide them. They don't match up to my doodle. So this guy isn't perfectly symmetrical because my copy that I dragged over did not match this up very well. Yeah, the rest is okay. So now that's fine. That's fine. Let's make sure these are joined. So, right, I don't have to do it that way. And so now I have this dude. So just for the sake of the process, right? I'm going to right click on it. I'm going to send it back. And you'll notice it's down here now. And why is that important? Select it. It's under the crown. So I could fill him in. I'm not going to fill him in because I have all this detail work to do. So I would do is probably his nose next. And so I would take my pen tool and it's symmetrical. So I would do this and then I would do that. I would do this. And then I would do this. And I'm going to zoom in a little bit just so that you can see the shape I'm trying to create. And I would do that. And then I would curve it to there. Right? And then we got to go into the strokes and do that. And then I actually have to take this and bring it to there. Deselect. Do Shift Option. Drag it over. Reflect. So some of it is good, but you see how that isn't? So now when I select that, I got to do Object, Path, Join, and then I'm going to move. I got a problem here. So I got to move that over a little bit. Maybe that. Object, Path, Join. Now you'll notice I put it under the crown. So I got to do this. Arrange, send to back. But remember, I already sent the silhouette to back. Remember this thing? I gotta send that to back. Either drag it or do send to back and zoom out. So now I have his nose done, and I would methodically go through this thing. So next would be his mustache, I think would probably be the best bet. Do that. Let me zoom out a little bit. So there it is. So there it is. And then Shift Option, drag a copy, Object Transform, Reflect. And there's his other one. And you'll notice, see how it doesn't perfectly line up? So now I got to zoom in. And now I'm going to use my direct select. I'm just going to nudge this thing a little bit. So even though it looked symmetric and I made a shift copy of it, I just want to make sure that it's good. And so now, one last little detail to this drawing. You're seeing how some of the line work is jagging out. You see how that jags out? I actually would like to make this its own line segment. So you see that? It's actually sitting on top of the shape, just to add the little jagged line to it. And so there it is. So now I'm just going to fill this in so you get an idea for the process. All right, get an idea for the process. So let's just make sure my color book, let's just make sure that is open. Right, so I want, I think I was doing that one. There it is. And so now I'm going to do blues because I don't know, to me, I always feel like the pirates are like this steely blue, gray kind of thing. I'm going to make his nose a little darker. I'm going to make his face the lighter. And now I'm going to make his stash. Oh, I'm going to make his stash. So now you can see the beginning of my illustration. Now I know that the pencil has a lot more detail work that I completed in the first sketch, but I just wanted to reinforce the basic skills we were doing in this guy without getting too much into the detail work, right? We're about an hour and 15 minutes or so into the lecture. We're seeing the process here for it. Pencil obviously is a little bit more detailed so far into what I'm doing. I could select this all in one big swoop and do no fill, and then I can continue to work on mine. Now that I picked my Pantone colors, I could continue to work on this guy by just making it back to no fill. But you just have to know with no fill that these overlapping lines are just because I'm making the shape go behind it, right? I'm making the shape go behind it. That's the only difference. And you'll notice each one of these shapes. So I'm going to do this. Just for the sake of it, I'm going to make these all jagged, just so I can go through the process a little bit quicker for the lecture. All of these shapes, I'm just going to make jagged for the sake of creating them for the lecture, even though I know they're a little bit more fluid. And I'm just holding down Shift. I'm going to do Shift, deselect, hold down Shift, and then do Shift Option, right? And then Object, Transform, Reflect. The beauty about drawing digitally is you can reuse things over and over again based on how you created the shapes if you want to use them over and over again. So look at how quickly, just by making those three shapes and duplicated them, I'm going to tuck that up for a second. I'm starting to get there with my guy. He's got teeth I've got to draw. He's got this jaw line for his mouth. And so I'm just going to continue very quickly drawing these shapes. I'm going to curve these, just so you get an idea of what we did with the first drawing with the pencil. And all we're doing is replicating the process. When I was in college, actually, I had a small design firm I started with one of my buddies in class. And he was very good at illustrating, drew a ton, but wasn't as savvy on the digital side as I was. So we kind of started a business where he would do some sketches for the clients, and then I would generate the digital versions of some of the concepts, and we would work together on creating our vector drawings. Most of them were either logos, or we did a lot of t-shirt designs, but it was great. One of our landlords was someone that owned a modeling agency in New York City, and he needed a refresher on his logo, and he contracted us to create the logo for this international modeling agency. So one of my first portfolio projects was actually a project for an international modeling agency, and we created it for 6 months free rent in our apartment. And boy, what a great deal was that for a college student. And what a great deal was that for him, because he got a really, which he was very happy with, logo that he used for his modeling agency, and for nothing in essence, because he owned multiple properties. But we got to live rent free for 6 months, which was awesome. And he actually used that logo for like 15 years until he refreshed it again. So it had legs. It lasted a long time. And so you're seeing what we're doing here. And we're creating the outer shapes first, and then the interior line detail second, so that the lines are on top of the shapes that we created. And so I could keep going and keep doing this, and I would create, in essence, a really detailed illustration like I did here for the pencil, and I could do it for this guy's face. Before I go any further, I'm just going to save this because we've been working on it in the lecture, and we're kind of plugging along here, because I want to go into the second part of digital illustration, which is typography. And so we're going to talk about the text tool, and the text tool is right over here. And there's two really important text tools, really, honestly, type tool and type on a path tool. And we're going to deal with the type tool first. And I'm going to close my Pantone colors for now, because you're going to notice right here that Design King is written in a straight line. So I'm just going to click the text tool. I'm going to hold down my cap. I'm going to do my cap lock, and I'm just going to type in the word design using a text tool, and I'm going to use my selection arrow. I can hold down shift and scale this up, or I can use the character palette, window, type character, which is what this thing is. And so let's talk about type for a minute, because we have font or typeface that we can pick from. And I'm just going to choose, I like Avenir. So I'm going to choose Avenir. Now, type or fonts have family members, and that's what this drop down is. And you're going to notice that Avenir has a lot of family members. Light typeface, a light italic, which they call italic or oblique, a book, a Roman, a book oblique, and those are just line thickness, then regular old oblique, then medium, which is a little heavier than book, medium oblique, black, really heavy, black italic or oblique, and then heavy, which is technically not as thick as black. Black is what we call like a black face or black line, and then heavy and oblique. So I'm just going to use black because that's super thick. Now, a couple of things you have to know in the character palette. One is this is called leading, or the space between lines. So if I double click here and I hit enter and type in the word king, a couple of things we have to know when we go to the selection box. One is we need to know the paragraph or center aligned, because this thing is center aligned. So that's number one. Now let's go back to our, oh, we're going to reshare that. I hit the button by mistake. So there we go. Reshared. Okay, so we have it aligned correctly, which center aligned. And then we have to do, which is leading. So watch as I go down in that number. See how the king word's getting closer to the word design? That's the amount of leading or space between lines. So we got to minimize that. And this is called kerning, positive and negative space between the letters. And you're going to notice that the type that they sketched out or doodled out has a tight kerning. So we're going to do about -10. Okay. So now we have our words in the font we like, in the kerning we like, in the leading we like. So I'm going to go ahead and hide that template for a minute. So now you can see it. Here it is. Oh, I like the typeface. Yeah, I could have chose like Sharpie marker or something to be a little bit rounder, but this is the style I chose. Now, the character palette's beautiful because those are the attributes, whether it's center align, left align, right align, justified. This is the size of the typeset. This is the leading or the space between the lines. This is the kerning or tracking. The space between the letters is actually called kerning. Then we have any kind of horizontal or vertical scale of individual letters. We have what's called a baseline shift, or moving it off its baseline, which is this little red line down here. But these top ones are what we need to worry about as kind of our introduction to typeset. We actually have a Designing with Type class where we really get into spatial recognition and visual hierarchy of typeset. But just for the sake of intro to typography for digital illustration class, we need to know these basic settings. Now, once we have it exactly the way we love it, which means there isn't a typo, excuse me, we're not changing the font or anything. Something you should do with your type is what is called create outline. So you'll notice that right now it's underlined and I could use the text tool and edit the letters, but they're actually a typeface tied to these words we typed out. Well, we don't want to share a file that requires a typeface that maybe a printer or a machinist doesn't have Avenir. Maybe they don't have Illustrator at all, and they're opening this file in their vector program, and they ask for a file that they can open. You want to make the type letters a shape, which means disconnect them from the font that you used in order to create them. So if you go to type you'll actually see this thing called create outlines. Now watch the difference of what happens. See how this is underlined? There's a box around it. Watch when I outline it. Illustrator thinks you drew this with a pen tool. So take a look at this. We can actually move the individual nodes in each one of these letters. Why is that important? Well, it's important for two reasons. One is it removes the font from the words you typed out. So the person who opens your file doesn't have to have the font that you use. And trust me, your computer will have fonts that other computers don't. You may download free fonts or buy fonts, and the file you share with someone else, they don't have that typeface. You need to outline your type when you're creating final artwork, just to make sure that what you have from a typeset looks exactly like what the computer or person you're sharing it with. And also you can do things like make the letters your own. So even though this is Avenir, look how I extended that crossbar, what's called a crossbar. What if I extended it all the way across? I don't know. Look at that. So I manipulated or modified the Avenir typeface in order to make something original or unique. Actually, logos are not just typed in words. Like if they type in using a typeface, a word like Target, they go in and modify and manipulate the letter form so that it can't be easily replicated with just a keyboard. There's some personal touch. They make the descender of a letter go further down the baseline. They cut short an ascender to make it shorter than the stem would have been, or the vertical line on a letter. They modify the shape of the letter to make it unique to the client, make it original. So when you're creating logos, you not only want to find a typeface that works for the client based on the audience, the consumer who they're reaching out to, but you also want to take a chance to manipulate or modify that letter form a little bit to make it unique to your client. So you'll see things like this, right, in a logo, or you may see something like this. I'm actually going to use the lasso tool to circle the inside of this D so that I only circle the inside of the D. So there it is. I can actually, once I have that selected, look how I can do stuff like that inside of the letter. I mean, once you outline your typeface, you can do all kinds of cool things to it. So if I rotate it, I could also move it if I wanted to. So you'll see all kinds of cool things like look at this. Like just, you could do whatever once this thing is a shape. So just know that once you type it out, no typos, no errors, the typeface the way you want it. You want to outline that typeface because that'll give you the ability to manipulate the letter form, set the leading, set the kerning, and then modify the letter form. But just make sure that you don't have any typos on it. By doing that, it allows anyone to open your file and see the type exactly the way you dreamed the type to be. Now, one other type tool. Type on a path. So a path can be anything. So watch this pen tool. So you see this? That's a line I drew. Watch this. The meanest Viking around this town. Maybe I need to write words somewhere around my design. Maybe I should have done it like this. Text on a path. The meanest Viking around this town. So now, make it a little bit smaller. What if I make it tighter? And let me zoom in. Remember, this is center aligned. So if I go to the paragraph and do left align, see how it moves it. Now this little line here is the starting point of the word. So see how I can move it up the line? So maybe it would be best if it only went around his beard. And I'm just using my arrow keys. So there it is. Maybe I need to move this guide. I'm going to move that up a little bit. So you see how I can adjust the guide and the words just keep following it? So I want to get them to start there. And then let's move it so it only drips around the bottom of his beard. So there it is. I like it. Kind of like a necklace. And so now I have it typed on a path. I have the typeface. I have everything set the way I want. Watch what happens. See how the guide goes away and now it's just a shape? I hold down Shift Option. I can make this thing as big. I can use my arrow keys and move it around. Any line can be a shape. So now watch. This is what you see everywhere. I'm just going to do that. I'm going to do this. And I'm going to use my text on a path. And I'm going to do that. And I'm going to do Viking. And I'm going to change the character and bounce it up. So look at this thing. Here's the little line to move it. I'm going to center it. And I'm actually going to do a copy and paste because I want to use that same template. So I'm going to move this, type, create outline. So there's my Viking word. I'm going to move this over. Use my text tool. Oh, double click by mistake. And let's do soda. Viking soda. Now, you see how this thing follows this? But we have a problem. If I rotate it, it's upside down. But you see this little line all by itself in the middle? So this is the beginning of the guide and the end of the guide. But you see this little line right here? Watch if I click and hold my mouse and pull it in. See how the guide goes to the inside? That means that your guide is used from the inside, not the outside of the stroke line. So let's just move this down a little bit so it's a little more legible. And you see how rotation is built into it? I mean, it's really a beautiful thing. So maybe it would be Viking, I don't know, soda. Maybe I put it inside his crown or something. Type, create outline. So here it is. And then I can figure out what I want to do with it. I'm actually not even sure what I want to do with it. I started messing around with it, thinking it would be something cool. So this thing maybe could go under the beard and this thing could go somewhere else, but all right, you get the idea. So what if Viking soda? Let's go to, let's make sure that our transform is scale, strokes, and paths. We're good there. I'm just going to do Shift Option, make this thing a little bit smaller. So here is the beginning of my thing that I'm creating. I don't know, maybe that would go like that. I don't know. Still messing around with it. Two different vector versions of drawings over sketches. So that covers our pen tool, our selection tool, our direct select, our shape tools, our line segment tools, our drawing over a sketch, our using the text tool, taking the text tool and creating an outline of the type, then using direct select to manipulate the letters if we want to, all based on the concept of drawing over a sketch or having a basic concept that you're drawing over. And that might mean a couple of photographs. Maybe it's a crown photograph that you trace, and then a lion photograph that you trace, and then you take the crown trace and you put it over the lion trace. And that's what we call collaging elements from different sketches or templates and creating one scalable graphic. So I'm going to save this. And now I want to go in and I want to talk for a minute about our out of book project, because this is our lecture for chapter 3 and 4. If you would like to finish the Viking sketch or do the chef sketch in a vector form, you can submit that for chapter 3 and 4 for me, because you will have used sketch as a template, which is chapter 3, and you would be using the direct select tool to manipulate the nodes or the points on your line, which is chapter 4. So we did the pencil and we started the Viking. You can finish the Viking, or you can do the chef, and you can submit that Illustrator file as chapters 3 and 4 for me. But that brings us to the out of book. You can't do the class lecture for the out of book. I'd like you to actually do an out of book project. And the reason that is because I actually sit on the board of this nonprofit, and they are always looking for t-shirt illustrations for events. So I thought it would be fun to have the class do a t-shirt illustration. And this particular event, Great American Cleanup, is done every single year by Keep America Beautiful and also Keep Lee County Beautiful, which is what the local branch or affiliation of Keep America Beautiful is. And this is actually the vector drawing that was used last year for Great American Cleanup. Now, you'll notice the text is on a path. It doesn't have to be for your project. You can draw it in straight, you can type it in straight lines. You can curve it or draw it on a line or whatever you want to do, but I want you to come up with a concept and draw or vectorize what your concept would be for a t-shirt for Great American Cleanup. It must say Great American Cleanup and Keep Lee County Beautiful, Inc. It doesn't have to have the URL. They did last year on the shirt, but it doesn't have to. You have to use a minimum of 3 colors to illustrate, and it has to be created as a vector graphic in Illustrator. 18 by 24, when you do file new document, make it 18 by 24. It will set itself, because you're doing an Illustrator file, as 300 DPI. You can save it for me as an Illustrator file. If the file gets really big, and it shouldn't, you can do a file save as Adobe Illustrator PDF if you wanted to, but you can give me an Illustrator file. It should not be too big. If you go to klcb.org, you'll see the color palette. You'll learn a little bit about KLCB, and you can do Great American Cleanup and Google it, and you're going to get all kinds of images, because it is a national Keep America Beautiful event that Keep Lee County Beautiful does locally. Now, keep in mind that your vector concept should be Florida based. And by that, I mean water, palm trees. We do have Australian pines. We do have brush. We do have pine trees. We do have oak trees. I mean, we do have other trees than palm trees, but you'll obviously notice by this one that it is the most recognizable. You'll notice this t-shirt has little sea turtles. We have manatees. We have all kinds of beautiful birds. So it's up to you what your concept is, but your out of book project this week is separate from our drawing vector logos for chapters 3 and 4. So remember, it's going to take you a few hours to do this. You can collect images and trace over the top and move your elements together. You can doodle if you're comfortable with doodling, and take a photo with your phone and email it to yourself, and then you can file place it in Illustrator. Whatever you need to do to create your Keep Lee County Beautiful t-shirt design. Remember, we have till next Tuesday's lecture. Let's try to stay on track, and please remember to read chapter 3 and 4, even if you do our lecture as the submission file for chapter 3 and 4. Please make sure you read them so that you have the terminology, so that you have the basics of what we're explaining through the lecture, so that when you eventually in a dream job environment are interacting with other visual communicators, you're using the correct terms for the process and the properties that we're doing as we navigate through each chapter. I like to do the lecture in a way that students can do the lecture for the book projects instead of the step-by-step. If they feel more comfortable listening to me, just make sure that you're reading it. They're not long chapters for the terminology. Most of the chapters are picture-based, but just make sure you're reading it for the glossary terms. I used to every once in a while do a little pop-up quiz on terminology, just to make sure that students are following along with the assignment step by step, so that they're absorbing what we're doing. That may happen again, so just be aware of that, that you should be reading the chapters, even though you may choose to do the out-of-book chapter assignment. So we're at an hour and 45 minutes. That's about the amount of time I like to do for the recorded lecture. This is open lab time now. It looks like we have some synchronous and some asynchronous this week. So just make sure that you watch the recording. I'll be posting it in a few minutes. I'm going to turn off the share, but keep the chat open. Everyone have a good week. Have a good night. Great job so far. I hope you're enjoying the kind of beginning steps of digital illustration and creating scalable vector graphics. Have a great week, everyone.